Hopefully everyone's doing all right today. So, from memory, inshallah, I think we started with we're gonna start with the Basmallah. I take it.
Let me just double check.
With the blue section.
Hmm. Yes, I think the rule of seeking refuge is saying Basmallah. Yes. Hmm.
All good. Yeah, just anybody would like to jump in and start reading, then we'll probably do what we normally do there.
Hmm.
So I'll take anyone
Uh,
on board.
Wanted to confirm how many brothers here have the book. Brother Muhammad, do you have got the book yet?
Yes, I have received the book.
Okay, sure. And Brother Ahmad or Brother Bilal, do you also have the book?
Yes, Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Okay, then I think I will let you guys take turns initially.
Yeah, sure.
Page 24, inshallah.
So, shall I start?
Ya Allah, Bismillah.
So page 23, right?
24.
24, sorry, 24.
Yeah, the rule of seeking refuge and saying Bismillah or Basmallah.
Okay. The rule of seeking refuge and saying Basmallah. When a reader wants to read something from the Book of Allah, the All High, he or she must start with seeking refuge in obedience to the Almighty Allah's word. So there is a verse from Quran, Faiza Karatal Quran Fastaiz Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. So when you read the Quran, seek refuge with Allah from the outcast Satan. Whether his or her recitation is from the beginning or the middle of a surah. As for the Bismillah, it is essential at the beginning of any surah of the glorious Quran except for Surah At-Tawbah. If the reciter wants to read from the middle of a surah and not from its beginning, he or she has the choice of starting with Bismillah or not. However, seeking refuge is essential as mentioned previously.
Oh, good. So that's probably. I'll just let you pause here. So I'm going and having a look at it. This one can get a bit tricky, so I'm going to do probably the really condensed version of it. So generally, I'll pass the mic around to everybody. So it's the question is now on isti'adha and basmala. What's the ruling? Is it wajib? Is it mustahab, something that's liked? Is it compulsory? Well, what opinion do you guys normally go with or have been made aware of? Okay, I'll try to break the ice. This is a bit it's a complex question. So it's most of the ulama here. We talk about the jumhur. The majority are of the opinion that it's mustahabba, or it's very highly encouraged. Uh, Me personally, my mashayikh and Dr. Ayman Swed, we are of the opinion that it is along the lines of obviously not just mustahab, but probably compulsory. I'd definitely highly encourage it, but I'm leaning towards the compulsory side because of the ayah that you just read. فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ قُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. There are prominent scholars here. I'm just reading from the notes. This is my personal notes. You might will not find this in the book. So you got scholars like Imam Atta and Thawri. They mentioned it, and definitely they are big endorsers of this thing. So uh, obviously, once we start reading the book, we start realizing that when somebody asks you a ruling, then that's what we normally say. However, we have to be take into account every single situation has its own unique circumstance. And mashallah, Dr. Ayman Swed is going to express that in detail with the following examples. But yeah, in case somebody pulls you up and asks you what it is, the Jumhur, the consensus of the scholars is mustahab, highly encouraged. However, me and the other mashayikh lean towards obviously I highly make it compulsory. There is another opinion as well, and this is something we need to be aware of. So it's normally if you're in a teaching setting and you have a halaqah, what would normally happen is that, let's just say you might be reciting to a sheikh or qari, and then they'll be going, let's just say you reach a hukum, like probably the first time you've ever seen, like Ishmam, for example, in Surah Yusuf, or the Hafs recitation. This is definitely a big stopping point. So what would happen is your sheikh would intentionally stop you. You'd have a discussion. You might try to release the hukum. Here we're talking about the kayfiyya, or the application of the hukum. How are you applying the correct recitation? And obviously there'll be discussion in between. In that case, what you should be doing is that if there is an inqita', as we call it, or a discontinuation in the tilawah, then you are to actually get back to saying isti'adha. So you'll be saying, let's just say you're saying Quran recitation, then you're having a presentation, discussion, or asking questions. So when you're transitioning back from human speech to say normal, you could say Quran recitation. Even if you've said isti'adha, it's preferred to repeat it again, because obviously it's you're restarting, you're re-engaging yourself, and you're trying to get yourself in the mood. So that's basically that rough, brief overview in isti'adha. So probably what we'll do, we'll carry on to the next section where the Sheikh says attention. So just carry on, Brother Bilal. There are a few places.
Yeah. Attention. The second part is attention. There are few places where it is better for the reciter not to utter the Bismillah. There are the verses relating to disbelievers and invocation against them, or exposing the hypocrites, or mentioning the fire and its description, or mentioning Satan. Like وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, they say Allah has offspring. Second is الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرَ, the devil threatens you with the prospect of poverty. Basmallah might become obligatory if the verse starts with the pronoun referring to Allah and the All High, such as هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن طِينٍ, He is the one who created you from clay. إِلَيْهِ يُرَدُّ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ, with Him alone is the knowledge of the hour.
Yeah, so mashallah, as you can see here specifically, the Sheikh is saying, he gave two examples where it's preferred to say isti'adha. You don't start with the Bismillah. They'll say, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُهُمُ الْفَقْرَ. Specifically, let's just say the ayah is talking about adhab, let's just say punishment or something severe or a threat, then, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we're not talking about the attributes of Allah being the all merciful, Rahman ar-Rahim, and then putting them together with something intense. Obviously, because when you look at it as a qari, you're more aware of your recitation. You're supposed to understand the context that you are reciting to. So not only are you aware of the selection of the basmala or isti'adha, but the section that you're going to recite. And that is the minimum that is expected of a qari. And, it goes to show you're not here just for the sake of just having a nice voice and sitting down and every saying, mashallah, to an audience. It's about understanding the content and applying the correct rules accordingly. So just to recap again, some places normally basmala isti'adha are highly recommended. In some situations you have to say basmala, and some situations it's preferred to obviously say isti'adha because of the context. Here we're not going to start Surah Tawbah because that's usually a topic on its own. But the question I'd like to ask the audience now is how do we know that Surah Tawbah doesn't have basmala? How many like you're free to list any sort of evidence, but what evidence do we have that basmala is not part of Surah Tawbah?
Is it in the hadith mentioned?
Specifically, I mean, uh, I'm yet to come across a specific hadith at the moment in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, but that's actually a good attempt at it. So, anybody else would like to give another guess? Probably a revision of what we did 2 lessons ago, just to keep an eye on everyone.
When they wrote the Musaf, that's where they didn't put it there.
Yes, exactly. So specifically for this one, this was a specific order by Sayyidina Uthman. So when you think about it, usually if something gets mentioned, when we talk about hadith usually goes back to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And as we know, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is how Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam recited it. So obviously, because of the rules of revelation and memorization, that's what we have. In terms of, as we said, wahi, and specifically when it was written down by Zayd ibn Thabit, as I said, at that time specifically, everything was not only recited, it was cited as well. So, mashallah, he had double backing evidence. So here, specifically, if somebody asks you what is the written evidence for this, you say Sayyidina Uthman, not just as a Khalifa, but the Uthmani script that is basically we're reading today, which is the Quranic script that Sayyidina Uthman initiated, is based off that. And he specifically did mention it about Surah Al-Tawbah. So that's the written side. As for the wahi, mashallah, as you know, it's already been narrated to us orally by our Qur'an that it is not part of Surah Al-Tawbah. So let's just decide the track for you guys there. Inshallah, carry on, Brother Bilal. We'll read the next section, next page, 26, the permissible ways of seeking refuge. Now, this can be quite a loaded one. So
When seeking refuge and saying the Bismillah, there are 4 ways, all of which are correct and permissible, and they are: number 1, separating all. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Then stop. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Number 2, seeking refuge from Bismillah and joining Bismillah with the beginning of the recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Number 3, joining seeking refuge with Bismillah and separating Bismillah from the beginning of the recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Joining all, the 4th one. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
well, so I'll just do a quick recitation. So these definitions are really important. So you might not get assessed at it. You do your first ijaza normally. You might get questioned on it if you're trying to get a full license ijaza, because there's different classifications. The highest one is basically Sheikh says, explain to me why did you read it this way. So just a quick recap. But this is so you might get away with not covering it in depth in ijaza level. However, you will certainly, and I promise you, if you do qira'at and move on to different recitations, you will get somebody to ask you, recite this to me in different forms. So it's kind of good to know for later on. But this explains basically the science of what you are listening, and at least you know what the qari, what method they're preferring to choose. I'll just do it really quickly. So here, and these are the definitions in Arabic. You will get asked quiz about them in Arabic. So I'm just going to, rather than out of formality, just read out what they are. So Bismillah, you've got قطع الجميع. قطع الجميع, disconnecting all of them. And examples you got أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله استغفر الله العظيم. This قطع الجميع. قطع الجميع, disconnecting. Sorry, I made a mistake. So أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. That's one. Number 2, قطع التعوذ. Or here we say, sometimes we refer to it as وصل الأول بالثاني, or connecting the first with the second. What do I mean by connecting the first with the second? It's استعاذة and basmallah. So you go أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Okay, so here in the book, I'll just explain what I said. قطع التعوذ. cutting the isti'adha. So you cut the first one off and you join the basmallah with the surah. So in the next one, wasl ta'awudh. Here you're connecting the ta'awudh. So you say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. And then you got wasl al-jami'. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Wasl, just that people know as well, there is technicalities as well. It can take place within a surah. The really important thing, just like what we did here, is if you're ever going to connect one wire with another one, it's not mentioned. It's not shown in this page, but this is another note. You need to always not only know the haraka that you're supposed to end on and connect with it, but also you need to know the hukum of tajweed. So not only does the haraka carry to the next one, the tajweed hukum carries. Inshallah, I'm not going to cover this in detail. We'll do practical examples later on. So here we said there's 4 examples. We said disconnecting all. We said disconnecting. Oh, sorry. I'll read this section since I'm already talking about it. You got the permissible ways of basmallah between 2 surahs. So now you're in a situation. So we talked about the beginning of the surah, and you can obviously the Sheikh explained all 4. Now we're talking in between surahs. Now here, basmallah between 2 surahs has 4 rational ways. 3 of them are permissible and 1 is forbidden. So here, what the Sheikh is saying, everything that we mentioned is permissible, and with the exception of joining the basmallah. Oh, sorry. Here it says way number 4, end of the surah with basmallah, and basmallah with the beginning of the surah. What do I mean by this? Let me think of an example. Let's just say you're reading Surah Al-Falaq. So, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. So here basically what you've done is you've joined Bismillah, and you've already linked it with the next surah and you stopped. So the ulama are saying this is definitely not encouraged, because the main aim of al-Basmallah specifically is that it was put there purely for the intention of dividing up the surah. So it's like a divider or a page divider. So what you've done is to not confuse the reader. You want to kind of alert them, because they're listening to you. You want to kind of portray to them that you are about to start a new surah. So you should read it like this. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. Stop. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So obviously Bismillah in this case, as you're aware, we've got different versions. You do a full stop as soon as you end the surah. You read the Basmallah, and then you've got different options. You can say Basmallah with qata', you can say Basmallah with wasl. Basically, you've got options. But what Dr. Ayman Sweds here is saying, there's 4 options. Whatever you do between the surah with Bismillah, you shouldn't link them together. It's easier that way. Take a deep breath and don't confuse the reader. So far, it's our first big table. Just any questions about Basmallah and Isti'adha in general combinations? It's getting pretty heavy, so I just want to see if everyone's kind of absorbed it. So everybody understands the four different types of permissible ways of Basmallah and Isti'adha.
Yeah, it's clear.
All good. So just a quick question in this case. What are the opinions of Basmallah? Is it actually an ayah? If we have to say it, is it the surah, or is it the ayah, or not? Or what is it specifically? Any ideas?
I think it's an ayah because, as from my understanding, it's also in Quran as a part of a surah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Yes, sir. It's definitely part of Surah. We got Al-Fatiha is definitely has Basmallah in. The Bismillah you'll see in Hafs Mus'haf is written as ayah. You've got the other ayah in the Quran, إِنَّهُ مِن سُلَيْمَانَ وَإِنَّهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. So it's actually embedded inside the ayah. So it's actually talking about how Sayyidina Sulaiman wrote the letter with the name of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So in this context, yes, it's an ayah. Some ulama are of the opinion that they call it ayah mustaqilla, or basically it's a ayah that is separate, meaning it's like a subject divider. But it's separate from the Quran. So the big question, and you definitely know, the reason why I ask you this is practical, applies to what we do normally in Salah. Should you read Basmallah openly, or should you read with the one that we're well acquainted with? Should you start with Alhamdulillah? That's the question I ask of you today, based on the evidence that we have.
I think we should read it silently, as we used to heard.
Okay, that's a good opinion. Anybody else has a different opinion? So everybody agrees it should be silent.
Yes, so in the Jama'ah, I have noticed that the Bismillah before the Surah Fatiha they recite silently, but sometimes before reading the next surah, they read the Bismillah loudly.
That's interesting. So common sense would dictate, based on what you said, if they read Bismillah and the next one loudly, should they be allowed to read Bismillah loudly as well, considering it's definitely an ayah in because Surah Fatiha 7 ayat only, 7 ayat. So could it be valid that there is an opinion where you can say Basmallah openly as well? Actually, that's a good question. I'll probably ask everybody now. It's like, what evidence do we have for not reading Basmallah out in the open, even though it's an ayah of the Quran, especially in Surah Al-Fatiha? And I'm speaking specifically in Salah, by the way. You can take a guess. You don't have to know the exact answer.
There should be some authentic reference for it to do so. Otherwise, it would be everyone's doing on their own understanding. So there should be some evidence behind it. Is there?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So the evidence that we specifically have, and you can find this in Hadith explicitly, that we're talking about the Khulafa specifically have recited. By Khulafa, I mean, we're talking, the Khalifa as the Imam leading Salah as well, talking Umar, we're talking Abu Bakr, and Umar, how strict he was as well, mashallah. The details are in, you can look up Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, but specifically, they recited this way. So, in saying that, obviously, then you have the Shafi'i opinion, as you're already familiar with. People of Shafi'i fiqh opinion, they read the Basmallah out in the open, based on their ijtihad. You've got, subhanAllah, Allahu Alam. You got not Abu Taymiyyah, astaghfirullah. Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah had a really unique opinion. He had an opinion in Salah specifically. He was of the opinion in both, because he said both opinions are valid. He highly encouraged it, however, if supposedly, let's just say you're reciting in the open and you're doing Salah, performing Salah, whatever, in a congregation where non-Muslims are listening to it, or it's the first time they're listening to the Quran, then he highly encouraged, in that case, say it out in the open, because they probably never heard Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in their life. So what I'm trying to say is the reason I'm asking you these questions, and subhanAllah, this is actually something I've become familiar with when I was doing tafsir at one point with studies, and Sheikh Shanqiti, subhanAllah, was asked this question in Medina Munawwara. Mashallah, he has his own study circle in Medina, Masjid Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And they asked him specifically, oh yes, do we say Basmallah Ista'adha? And subhanAllah, he said, this is, although the fuqaha or the fiqh jurisprudence experts have their own opinion, whether it's Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi'i, at the end of the day, he said the opinion and the final say lies with the Qur'an, or the reciters. The reason why I ask you this question, and really early on, it's already only page 26, is because not only are the people in your congregation, if you're leading Salah, for example, and you're leading Taraweeh, you're not only supposed to have answers for people behind you in Salah. Oh, this is why I did it over here. I made a mistake in Salah, that's why I made sujood. You're supposed to have the answer. If you're supposed to be a fully qualified qari, you're supposed to have an answer for faqih. So if somebody behind you is completed a 4-year degree, whether it's Darul Ulum or whether it's Medina Munawwara or Al-Azhar, if they come up to you and say, you're a Qur'an expert or you have an ijazah, please explain to me the rules of Basmallah, then in this case, you should have the answer as well. And mashallah, this is coming directly from a senior lecturer at a university. And mashallah, that's expectations, and mashallah, high expectations they have of people, at an ijazah level, they are studying Tajweed. So that's why I kind of propose that question. So just to let you know, although the different opinions are valid, you need to have your own opinion to justify things. And inshallah, Dr. Ayman Swed does this really well in the book. He helps you to formulate your own opinion, understand in the in-depth reasons behind it. Like, for example, like now, mashallah, all of us know why you can't do Basmallah in a certain way. So at least when we go back and teach our own kids or communities, everybody should know there is one way of doing Basmallah incorrectly. So, alhamdulillah. And you're free to ask me any of these questions, and any of your respected teachers as well. So inshallah. Ya Allah, Bismillah. I'll probably stop picking them. Brother Bilal, I'll grab somebody else maybe to carry on to the next section on page 28 for the permissible ways of Basmallah between two surahs, just as a practical demonstration.
Ustad, I'll start.
Jazakallah khair, bro. Go for it.
Page number 28, right?
Yep.
Separate all of them. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Stop. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Stop again. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Number 2, stopping at the end of the ended surah and joining the Basmallah with the beginning of the next.
Mm-hmm.
The example is وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق. Number 3, joining all. ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق. So in this case, joining together.
I'll just stop you there. Jazakallah khair. So mashallah, here we have a really good practical demonstration of how when you're joining, you're actually not only joining the Basmallah and the connecting those two surahs, but the Tajweed rules are carrying on. So mashallah, as you can see, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ. So this is compulsory as well. So mashallah shows the level detail the Qur'an had, and mashallah as you move on later on, once you complete your ijazah and start doing either higher studies at university for Qur'an, they'll even teach you the type of rasm or drawing of the harakat that actually helps facilitate this. Now, Jazakallah khair, really help enjoy the practical demonstration. Just carry on with the next one, bro. The forbidden ways of Basmallah.
Sure. The forbidden ways of Basmallah between two surahs. The forbidden way is joining the end of the finished surah with the Basmallah while separating the Basmallah from the beginning of the next surah. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. قل أعوذ برب الفلق. This way is forbidden because it gives a false impression that the Basmallah is related to the finished surah. So you want to explain, Ustad?
I don't know, Jazakallah khair. I think we covered it earlier, but mashallah, here you have a practical demonstration of how not to do it. So just remind everybody. Carry on, Jazakallah khair.
All right, okay. So next section is attention. The reciter should be careful to adhere to parsing and the rule of Arabic grammar when she links seeking refuge with the Basmallah and the beginning of surah. For example, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك. So that she pronounce the letter meme with kasra at the end of seeking refuge, as well as meme in ar-rahim with a kasra, and dropping the linking hamza from ikra bismi rabbik.
Awesome, alhamdulillah. One more thing I think we didn't cover, although I know Dr. Ayman Sweid covered it in his lectures, explanation of the book, and it's covered in other books. The basmala of the halaq, basmala isti'adha. So basically, it's if you've had sat down in a halaqah sitting before, sometimes if you're sitting down and reciting, and the sheikh's listening to recitations, one reading a page every time, usually the first person there, if they do this isti'adha, is usually enough for the halaqah. But out of, you could say, good practice, what people tend to do sometimes is they'll say isti'adha again. So it's there's no harm in that as well. So just letting everybody know. So that's when you would openly say isti'adha in a halaqah setting. The next person after you in the halaqah doesn't have to say it. The other obvious one is you have to say it openly when you're in a public setting. So you're reciting before people. So obviously that's when you want to say Basmallah isti'adha out loud. Apart from that, any questions so far about Basmallah isti'adha and the rules pertaining to it? All good?
Oh, good. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. So inshallah, where was I? Oh yes. So before we start getting into the heavy stuff of the Arabic letters, this is actually a nice reminder for everybody as well, myself included. So I think in the last lesson I was talking about the hadith where the three people that will be punished in the hellfire. Just to let everybody know specifically, the hadith was referring to a alim, and the other one was referring to mujahid, and the other one was referring to somebody that had a lot of money. Might have given maybe the false impression the person was a qari, but here basically the Arabic translation of the hadith basically says, but basically I used to recite, of you, so to speak, and this is preached to a lot of people that are about to engage in ijazah, just as a humble reminder, but just letting everybody know, I can make mistakes as well. That's perfectly valid, and it would happen to anybody, even if you're a subject matter expert. So it's you can get things wrong as well. So yeah, it's just to clarify that from the last session, and yeah, basically it's you might. I'm of the opinion of it's even if you hear somebody reciting incorrectly, normally the best thing to do is not to put them down, because obviously they either could be learning or they aren't aware of their mistake. So when you think about it, it's better off not to kind of like use that knowledge that Allah's given you, benefited you of out of the correct adab of doing it, to flex your muscles over that person, and you're waiting for them to make a mistake. So obviously we allow always the Qur'an to have breathing space. It only becomes an issue if somebody indulges in a practice where they might do something out in the open. Don't get me wrong, this is not specifically referring to maqamat. I'm talking could be happening to other things, because like I said, some people can read with a maqam and read correctly. Other bid'ahs that can be introduced sometimes. A person either is being taught incorrectly or isn't aware of the hukm. So it's always good, as the hadith says, or it's like, as we know in the Quran, if somebody comes to you with bad news or incorrect news, then tabayyanu. or clarify. So I'm just letting everybody know, because it's a very common thing, mashallah, especially if you start doing even a Tajweed course before your graduation. Somebody will ask you, oh, what do you think of so and so? What's their recitation and whatnot? SubhanAllah, the best adab I personally got before starting with this was probably with Sheikh Amir himself, because you speak with him and be like, oh, but you're probably listening to the Taraweeh recitation, weren't you? You're aware Taraweeh has you can easily get carried away in Taraweeh emotionally and mentally. And it's like, oh, Allah, that makes sense. And subhanAllah, you'll probably grow up 20, 30 years later, and next thing you know, mashallah, the Sheikh not only is your Sheikh is right, maybe he was actually covering up for the Sheikh in a nice way, and then you come back another 10 years and you realize the Sheikh that used to read incorrectly started reading correctly. So mashallah, it's just like, it's always good to kind of like not put each other down in the community, and that's what I find the beauty of it. It's like we always try to correct each other, and we're all students on the path. So just thought I'd clarify this with everybody. Muhammad. Now, before I start, we'll grab somebody else, I think, to maybe. Or would you like to continue, Brother Saeed, with the Arabic letters?
So, Ustad, can I ask a question? So, is it okay then to read loudly the Bismillah in Salah after Surah Fatiha, or it has to be silent? This is the first question. Second, so if we are reading a surah or an ayah from a surah in the middle, like Maliki Yawmiddin, do we need to do Bismillah or not?
Well, that's a really good question. I'll probably answer that one, since the second one that you said. If you're reading in the middle of the surah, then yes, I'd highly encourage Basmallah. So it's there is a slight difference of opinion. I think some people are talking about Surah Tawbah, because they have like a really strict adherence of not saying Basmallah, so they might just say Isti'adha. So I'll say, look, I'm happy to entertain that opinion, specifically for Surah Tawbah, provided that you don't say Isti'adha incorrectly. What do I mean by incorrectly? As we said, you say Isti'adha, you say A'udhu Billahi Shaitanir Rajeem, and there's Ayah of Mercy. So Surah Tawbah is a really unique thing, because as we know, that is the only surah. It was known as Bara'ah. It was like a threat, direct threat to the mushrikeen. So in that one, people, some Qur'an, they'll say, look, we strictly adhere to the written script of the Quran. We will all not say Basmallah at the beginning of a Tawbah, but we'll say Basmallah in the middle of Tawbah. Others are saying, okay, we'll stick to Isti'adha, but obviously, as if you're only going to use Isti'adha, make sure you use it correctly. But the general rule, just so no one's confused, the general rule is Basmallah allowed if you're starting with a little surah, and yes, I highly encourage it. So that's that question. The second question, with regards to, obviously, different sheikhs will do it differently. Like, say, one of my sheikhs, he'll probably sometimes he'll say Basmallah, sometimes he won't. You might find me, for example, reading Basmallah quietly. At the same time, I would definitely pray behind somebody that says Basmallah openly. It's not really a big deal for our style of recitation. The biggest, what I have to tell everybody, the reason why the Qur'an and the Fuqaha have said even go to the Qur'an to opinion, like you can't even go to, subhanAllah, like a Fahih Million when no one's saying, oh, what's your opinion? You'd be like, oh, yes, this is my opinion, but speak to a Qari. Like, imagine, mashallah, somebody studied Sharia 50 years and done fiqh and is a judge, he'll say, okay, go to a Qari. The reason being is that once you finish your Qur'an and you get your ijazah, you learn everything about your Imam. Now, the reason why we do the Basmallah is Hafs was known for Basmallah, and that's what we heard him say. And this was carried on by his teacher Asim, and this is a tradition that he had. The reason why I mentioned this to you specifically is once you start doing really advanced stuff, like you move in Shatbiyya and past that, there are other qira'at. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there are other qira'at, they don't recite Basmallah in between. Have you guys heard that before? Like, they actually link the surah without a Basmallah. Is anybody aware of this, or is this new to you?
It's new to me.
Yeah, I think it's totally new, because even in Taraweeh, when the they're reciting in a speed. When the surah finished, they take a slight pause, which means they are reading Bismillah silently, and then they start the next surah loudly. So I think
Yes. Yeah. So this one, this is my opinion. This is personally for me personally, and I have my evidence to stand beside it. If you're leading Taraweeh, then because you are leading Salah and you're letting other people know, rather than opting for a sakta and saying Bismillah quietly, I'd say it openly. So unless it's sort of Tawbah. Tawbah has different ways, as we said. We're not going to discuss them in detail. But basically, I'll read it out in the open. I'll go, Amin sharri hasidin idha hasad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. But I'll do it for other surahs as well. The reason being is that Hafs himself did it. And because I have ijaz on Hafs, I do exactly what Hafs did to the letter. If I'm reading to you, however, and like I said, it's an oral and written tradition. If I'm reading Khalaf, for example, and I'm not a Khalaf expert, I'm just letting everybody know here out in the open, I'm not a Qura'at, Sughra or Kubra yet. Obviously, when you study Usul, you learn these things. This is part of your foundation course. So Khalaf recitation, when we recite Khalaf, we'll say, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ قُلْ أَعُوذُ, and then, you see how it links? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. I intentionally did not read Basmallah. So I read the whole surah. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق من شر غاسق إذا وقب من شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد قل أعوذ برب الناس. And that's where I stop. The reason being, and this is specifically for Khalaf, but obviously you got the Qur'an, you got Hamza, mashallah, my understanding, my limited understanding, he reads like this as well. Basically what this means is that their opinion, and this is a valid opinion because they received this, mashallah, from the Sahaba, is that the Quran is one continuous revelation. And that style of recitation, if you are reciting in that form specifically, then you are allowed to skip the Basmallah between the two surahs. So that's why we recite Basmallah openly. And I tell people, especially Hafs practitioners, which is basically most of the world's population, is if you're going to recite in Hafs, then obviously in this case, it's up to you what you do in Salah. The Fuqaha have a different opinion about Basmallah, whether you say it openly or you don't say it openly. But when it comes between the verses, I personally would encourage, especially in Tawweeh, it actually allows the person to know they're transitioning in a different surah, and it helps prepare them and the Qari as well. And and Imam Hafs did it too, So it's and I hope that's answered the question. It's probably all new to you, if I'm correct.
So what I understood that this means that when they start the Taraweeh, they can just say once Bismillah and they can keep joining the surahs and continue.
Yeah, but I'm of the opinion if I say, let's just say, for example, I read Al-Fatiha, I finish Al-Baqarah, there's no harm in saying Bismillah again. ربنا ما لا تقدر واعف عنا كل وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. And if I want to continue كافرين, I can say كافرين بسم الله كافرين بسم الله الرحمن but here I have to link it actually. It has to be كافرين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم. Or I can say قطع, as we said, we practice قطع. فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم. So mashallah, as you can see now, it's this is the opinion that I encourage. It's because Hafs did it. You probably heard the greats, mashallah, like Sheikh Ali Hudayfa, when he's being recorded, he probably says the Bismillah again. He's probably said it 114 times. And like I said, some fuqaha have that opinion as well. Like Sheikh Ibn Baz said, it's a ayah that's a dependent, but it's not written, and it's used in between as a subject divider. So there is a fiqh opinion, and there's also a qira'ah opinion backing the saying of Basmallah between surah. So yeah, that's why I encourage it personally. So it's, but yeah, like I said, if you're praying behind somebody and they're choosing to say Basmallah themselves, then doesn't invalidate salah as far as I'm concerned. But we just do it to keep on the tradition that we've been passed on as part of our ijazah. So Imam Hafs did it, And I encourage people to do the Basmallah because you're trying to, as when you study Shatibi and other advanced texts later on, you'll find out that there are other guys that don't do Basmallah. So what I tell people in this case, if your style is based on Basmallah, make use of the Basmallah. Just differentiate yourselves from the Qur'an that don't do Basmallah. You see what I mean? So hopefully it hasn't really confused anybody. Any questions so far?
Just to summarize the last point, so you're saying whether we do it or don't do it, both are okay, or you're saying if you're doing one style, just keep on doing one style?
For us personally, like I'd encourage people to stick to their own style. So with Basmallah, the reason why in our style of recitation, people don't say Basmallah out in the open, they have their own fiqh opinions. And like I said, it has been narrated in hadith where some of the Sahaba didn't intentionally say Basmallah out in the open. So what the hadith doesn't specifically tell you what qira'at each Sahabi did, because as we know, there is another hadith that said different Sahaba had different styles of recitation to the point they nearly got physical with one another. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi came to him and he approved both of them. So just like how Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi approved their recitations, basically, it also approves every single opinion, including Basmallah. So what you should do, if you're sitting down before a sheikh and you ask him specifically what tariqah and what style they're doing, what's your style? If it's Hafs, okay, what did Imam Hafs do? Everyone knows Imam Hafs recited Basmallah in the open. So I strongly encourage people to say Basmallah out in the open. So it's in terms of salah, obviously if you have your own opinion, there is nothing wrong with saying Basmallah internally because you are going off the opinion that that's how the Sahaba did it as well. And that's also valid in Hafs. But I highly encourage between surahs, if you're doing specifically Tarawih, or not just between surahs, but even in public recitations, say the Basmallah as well.
Does
So
it
yeah.
does it include the Surah Fatiha one as well that you mentioned earlier in Hafs? Is that loud as well?
Well, yes, definitely. And the biggest endorser of this is where we're from the fuqaha is Imam Shafi. So for him, he is very straightforward with regards to his opinion. He's saying, look, it's an ayah in the Quran and it's being recited out in the open. Therefore, in my madhab, you have to say it. So, but in saying that, our main job at the end of the day, Jazakallah khair, with all due respect to Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, and everybody else, they simplified the rules for us to be easy. But at the end of the day, the Qari, we're all trying to copy, you could say, the Sahaba, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It is highly encouraged. What I encourage people is obviously you look at the context, you look at your style of recitation, does it have Basmallah or not? And then the biggest person to fall on is the opinion of the person that gave you the ijazah or about to get the ijazah. Like, what would they encourage? So, yes, in our style, the default case is say everything openly. There are different opinions. We do accommodate different opinions, like specifically in Salah, where it's said quietly. I'm happy for you to take whatever opinion. However, if it comes between reading two different surahs, especially in Tarawih, then I'd say Basmallah openly. So at least the people behind you are aware that you're switching. Inshallah. So
just for knowledge, which styles don't say Bismillah loudly in Surah Fatiha, especially?
For me specifically, well, I mean, I can't really listen. Like I said, I haven't done the Ashr Qira'at, but if you're reciting, like say Khalaf, for example, Khalaf, if he's linking between the surah, he has a really unique one. Inshallah, there's a nice YouTube channel where you can listen to Khalaf recitation. And mashallah, he will literally end at the ayah, the first ayah of the next surah. And Imam Hamza did this as well. And that's valid. And then I'm not sure specifically, but I'm trying to go off my memory now. I haven't memorized a Shatibiya, but specifically, it is saying, yes, there are Imams that their style says you have to say Bismillah, and others saying you can't say Bismillah. because they regard their opinion. The Qari of that school says it's what the Quran is one continuous narration. So it's they don't say in between as they're doing it. But here, what we're doing is we are reciting according to the rules of Hafs. Hafs is basically, subhanAllah, for some reason, it's become the majority recitation for the world's population. The reason why I'm telling this to everybody is that there are different parts of the world. If you go to Quran competitions, international ones, and you will listen to things you've never heard in your life before, yeah, subhanAllah, you realize this is exactly how the Sahaba read. So here, the majority, don't get me wrong, although the majority of the world's population reads Hafs, and some of them they read Basmallah, some of them don't, there are other styles that are also valid. The one thing that you shouldn't be doing is picking styles. So just like how you can't find somebody saying, oh yes, I'm a Maliki Shafi'i opinion, or something like that. Fiqh is a bit different, but obviously it's got different sets of rules. But for Quran specifically, you have to stick with the style that you're reading. So our style, yes, it highly encourages Basmallah. So, Ajmain. So that's why I tell others, it's like this is the foundation of our style, but also be open-minded to different opinions, different qura, and different qura within your style of recitation. Because mashallah, obviously we're not encouraging extremism here. So it's as long as you understand the opinion behind the reciter, inshallah. So hopefully that clarifies it. Bismillah. Any more questions on Ista'adha and Basmallah?
So the only forbidden way is the one which is on the screen, that we cannot end a surah with joining the Bismillah and then pause and start the next surah.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're giving the listener the false impression that you're actually ending that's part of the surah you just finished. So to avoid any confusion, we just separate it. And the fuqaha, subhanAllah, do support that opinion by saying, look, it's a page or a subject divider, or page divider. So alhamdulillah. Mashallah, it's getting easier to actually give the course on the Basmallah. Last one took me about 2 hours nearly, so alhamdulillah, I've been a patient audience. Yeah, so I take it as we're all good with Basmallah Ista'adha.
Yes, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Jazakumullah khair.
I have one question. I still remember back home in Pakistan, I have seen on Quran just before Surah Toba. I still remember that verse actually. So I just want to know, maybe shall we continue this one or just leave it as you have said few rulings about this one. I still remember we shouldn't recite Bismillah, but the verse still I remember. A'udhu billahi minan nasi min sharril kuffari wa min ghadabil jabbari al izzatu lillahi wa rasulihi wa lil mu'minin. This I still remember. In Pakistan Indo-Pak script, they have mentioned this one, that you can recite this before surah. Eh, Any idea about this one, or shall we stop this one? I didn't, but I still remember. I thought better to ask you. You might have an
It's
idea about this one.
It's actually a good question that you had there. So is this for the whole Quran, or is this specifically for Surah Tawbah?
No. In Surah Toba, they have mentioned at the last line, read this before instead of Bismillah.
Well, that's interesting. So just a question, because I'm trying to understand the drawing of that mushaf. Do they do sujood as well?
Yes.
Yes, sir. The sajda, as far as I'm concerned, the memory is definitely being recorded. So we have the sujood there. I'm just asking because sajda's got nothing to do with it. But basically, sajda's going to be a different talk. But basically, as far as I'm being mawed, but there's nothing specific that Imam Hafs has said that has to be said before Surah Tawbah. And the written evidence that we also have is when the Mus'hafs were rewritten by Sayyidina Uthman, in the Uthmani script, he said, write it here and do not put Bismillah here. So in terms of, is this like, what is this specifically? Is it a dua, or is it, what is it classified as?
Looks like a dua, like A'udhu billahi minan nasi min sharril kuffari wa min ghadabil jabbari ala izzatu lillahi wa rasulihi wa lil mu'minin.
Okay, so I have to admit this is the first time I read it, but I'll. This is. It's
Yeah,
kind of
looks like ghazab on kuffar. It's same thing, like something like that, threaten, a curse on them.
Yeah, because like the word kuffar, I can't really even imagine putting it in. I'm trying to go through my other notes right now. Oh, here we go. So my understanding, this is highly technical now, and you might have heard like big Qur'an, like Abdul Basit and others saying this. And here I'm talking between surahs. You probably heard this famous recording of Muhammad Surah Al-Duha. Yeah, so there's already, it's got millions, hundreds of millions probably views already. So what happens here? What we're trying to say is here we said isti'adha. So isti'adha, when I ask what isti'adha is, everybody tells me A'udhu billahi shaitanir rajim. There's something that's called Sigat al-isti'adha, which means different forms of isti'adha. What do I mean by this? This is basically, this gets in I don't really teach this I teach this past in the Ijaza level if somebody is interested, but I don't normally highly endorse it because this is where difference of opinions of the Quran comes. So here we normally, most of the world's population, they'll say A'udhu billahi shaitanir rajim. Some people they might go A'udhu billahi as-sami'il alim minash shaitanir rajim, or they might recite Inna Allah huwa as-sami'ul alim bismillahir rahmanir rahim alhamd, like that. They'll say, for example, they'll say A'udhu billahi as-sami'il alim minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Another one will say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله هو السميع العليم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So what I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, we call this Sirat al-Isti'adha. There's different forms of Isti'adha. But you can see, like if you haven't heard, some of you probably heard me saying this to you for the first time, even at the Ijazah preparation course. I've never talked like this. And when I say Isti'adha, I'll never say it like this. But you can at least figure out that if I recited this to you like I did for the first time, this is Isti'adha. Am I correct? I'll probably say this to the guys that turn up to the Ijaza class. Like, it's probably the first time you heard me recite like this, right? But you can still tell it's Isti'adha. Am I right?
I could hear the Bismillah clearly, but not the Auz part. So maybe I need more
Yeah.
other.
So I just gave you two forms of Isti'adha. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. Then another one. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله هو السميع العليم. Basically, you can figure out that there is Isti'adha in it. It's slightly different, but it's a different sigha.
So now it's clear.
Yeah. So more or less. So it's so basically these are Isti'adha, and what I just gave you as an example, we call it Sirat al-Isti'adha, different forms of Isti'adha. If it's not an Isti'adha, and it's written in the Quran, but as we already know by now, it's only Basmallah that's written in the Hafs part of narration, and people say this is a dua, then they need to have evidence backing it up. So it's, I have to admit, it's the first time I see it. The Sirat Isti'adha, I have a book by Imam al-Dabba', Jazallah khair. This is like a really famous, one of the Imams over in Egypt. He actually has tables, mashallah, of the isnad of people. So he can go to the treasure and you tell him, oh, who's my sheikh and this sheikh, and he can go back in the tree and find out who read what. It's like some serious CSI stuff, man. This has been happening, mashallah, for over 1,000 years. But you can track these things down. If you can't track this down to an imam, or more importantly, if you ask somebody what's this, if they say, oh, this is a dua or something you have to say, it's like, what is something? It has to be either basmallah or isti'adha. If they're saying there's a dua, then obviously I have reasons to be suspicious. So it's in saying that, don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, there are big ulama behind writing the mushaf, but it's the first time I actually hear this. So it's Yeah, it's but it's if it's not isti'adha, is it? Was it Brother Saeed that asked the question?
Bilal, I think it was Bilal.
Oh, sorry, Brother Bilal. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, so you don't know what it is? Is it they're saying it's just something that that you have to say, or what is it?
No, like recommended before starting Surah Toba. No, because I just asked, so there's no problem. So I think, oh, I'm not sure actually, but I still remember that one. I will just cross check and ask you.
Yeah. Feel free to find out what it is. But the thing is, if it's not a form of isti'adha, and there is no hadith backing it up, then you have no evidence to read it. Well, basically, pick that side or citation. The only thing that they normally teach us in the syllabus, and that's why we have a relatively short course on Basmallah, as I call it. That last one I did in 2 hours, is they sit down and show you different ways, every single different way of reading it, because that's what you do in Ijaza, by the way. You have to demonstrate to the Sheikh every single way of linking between Surah Al-Anfal, Astaghfirullah, not Al-Anfal, Surah Al-Tawbah. Let me go back and give you an example. So here we're talking about Surah Al-Tawbah, right? وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me?
Yes,
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 okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just the line was muted. Sorry, I think I was reading the wrong page, but here, let me read. Correction, there is no sajda in Surah Al-Anfal. I was reading the wrong page. Surah Al-Anfal, the last ayah of Surah Al-Anfal, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والذين آمنوا من بعد وهاجروا وجاهدوا معكم فأولئك منكم وأولو الأرحام بعضهم أولى ببعض في كتاب الله إن الله بكل شيء عليم. So here we practice the different forms of linking and stopping. You have to do this as part of your ijaza. So you might read إن الله بكل شيء عليم براءة. Next person. إن الله بكل شيء عليم براءة. Here I've done a sakta. So a sakta is definitely half of a stop. That is what's taught in the syllabus, and that's what's usually encouraged. Because you're trying to transmit to the reader. But in terms of a dua, this is the first time I'm hearing this. So yeah, I just gave you the different ways of reciting between Anfal and Tawbah. So Jazakallah khair. If you can find out the reason behind it, brother, that'll be really good. Because if there's a different seerah I'm not aware of, then I'll definitely let you know.
Inshallah.
So Ibrahim, just a question about we said that we don't say Bismillah in the beginning of Surah Toba, but if somebody is reciting from the middle of Surah Toba, does he still not read Surah Bismillah before that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I heard that from one of my sheikhs. He said obviously there is an opinion where people are saying, oh yeah, because it is double confirmed that you can't say Bismillah in the beginning of Surah Tawbah. I'm just doing it for the sake of recitation. I tell people, look, if you want to say Bismillah for Surah Tawbah, I personally would say Isti'adha. But I say if you're going to say Bismillah Surah Tawbah, obviously do say it, but you can't say it. And let's just say, I'm looking at the second ayah right now. وَأَذَانُ مِنَ اللَّهِ is basically the ayah after that, which means it's basically a threat. So you can't say, you're stuck in a really, it's kind of like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You don't want to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're threatening to those, it's just like, so that's, subhanAllah, your deep understanding of Basmallah Isti'adha is going to show in Surah Tawbah.
Okay.
So, mashallah, that's why it's important to do an ijaza under ijaza certified person, because they will correct you about this. They'll say, your qira'ah doesn't make sense. You'll be like, well, I did everything. It's like ijaza isn't about doing everything. It's about feeling it.
Yeah.
Because, it's is at the end of the day that's you're trying to pass on not just the kitab, and mashallah, Allah said He's going to protect the book. You're supposed to get the feelings of the Sahaba and those I've read before you. So yeah, it's be really careful. I'm of the opinion of obviously say isti'adha. I'd like to be on the safe side. It's like Basmallah said, what should I say for the rest of it? I'll probably read isti'adha, but at the same time, don't combine your isti'adha with a ayah of mercy. And don't combine your basmallah with a threat of punishment. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much.
Ajma'in, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Any more questions about isti'adha and basmallah? Inshallah, it's a really clued up audience we have here today. Inshallah, it's like asking all the detailed questions. It definitely kept us running. Inshallah. So we're all good on basmallah and isti'adha. I think I got my record now. So it's mashallah 68 minutes. So it does get easier with time, alhamdulillah. So I'm hoping this is giving you a really in-depth overview of the rules, every single rule of basmallah, isti'adha, the combinations that are allowed, the opinion of the fuqaha, and what the qura, see as a valid opinion, and how Imam Hafs, mashallah, really valued the basmallah, because obviously that's a big part of his thing. So it's mashallah, it's something we read every time in salah, but we take for granted, but it's actually a big deal.
So Ustad, I just want to confirm. So when you say isti'adha, it means that we are getting ready or getting prepared, correct?
Yes, yeah. So basically,
Correct.
you're getting prepared by seeking refuge from the shaitan, and obviously it's reason being, I don't know about you guys, but you can easily get distracted when you're reciting the Quran, because now you're engaging. It's not like you're reading hadith, although hadith has its place, and I'm not trying, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to lower the state of hadith. You're getting closer on Allah. You're actually in it's a form of ibadah, basically, what you're reciting, because you're getting hasanat. Like if you sat down tomorrow morning and going, subhanallah, and I do understand people sometimes they have their hifz circles. I'm not here to shut people down from doing good deeds, and I'm not saying subhanallah and saying salawat Rasul is a bad thing, because we all do it. But if you sat down tomorrow morning and you said subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah with the fastest speed, you'll never get as much hasanat from reading the Quran in terms of quantity and massive amount. So you can imagine, you need that equal level of isti'adha to not distract you from it, because you will get distracted. The more you keep reciting, I promise you, this is a guarantee, you will get distracted. And it sounds a bit crazy. Some people get, subhanAllah, they're surprised, like, what do you mean if I read Quran 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, I'm going to become a hafiz? Like, well, yes, you can, if you stick to it. So subhanAllah, that's why, getting your head into the right mind space with this isti'adha and everything is really important, because even throughout the middle of recitation, you get distracted. So so that's why, that's probably another reason as to why I personally into isti'adha, other than the fact that it's already an ayah in the Quran, by the Quran. So there's Jazakallah khair for that. All good. Any more questions? I'll probably leave it at there if there isn't anything. We'll probably start, inshallah, on the Arabic letters.
Yep, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, alhamdulillah. Hopefully they answered everyone's things. Like I said, if anything else comes up later on afterwards, feel free to send it forward and we'll answer, inshallah. I'll probably grab somebody else for the Arabic letters. Any volunteers?
I can read from the book as well.
Yeah, Allah, bismillah, bro. Give it a shot.
Okay, the Arabic letters, pronounced Arabic alphabet, and I think there are 29 letters. So the letters of the Arabic alphabet are 29 letters, arranged by Imam Nasr ibn Asim al-Laysi. Yes, 90 after Hijri, in accordance with the similarity of script among them. He dotted them in order to differentiate the similar ones. Similar. So attention, the alif, which is at the beginning of the letters of the alphabet, is the hamza. As for the lengthening alif, it is the letter preceding the last one, and it is expressed as like lam fatha alif la, because it is always sakina, and the letter that precedes it always has a fatha. So what does this mean, Sheikh?
Yeah. So here, mashallah, here we're talking about, we call it alif and alif maddiya. What does that mean? So alif is basically the here, like ab, for example. That's what they were referring to, which is the first letter that you see in the book. Here, alif al-maddiya is basically the one that doesn't have a hamza on the top. So here, that's the differentiation. The main, because the hamza is what gets you the sound. So what happens? Example, or you might say, what's the alif maddiya in this example? I'll give you an example. So the word ma, you got a meme, and you got, we don't call it the alif, we call it alif maddiya, which means it's an extension of the meme sound, and then you have a hamza. So in Tajweed, we read it as ma, if you're stopping on it. When you're speaking normal Arabic, you might not extend it that much, but you'll say ma. So that is what referred to alif maddiya. Alif maddiya is an alif without a hamza, and it just extends the sound, like ma, sha. But with the hamza, you have to go, for example, like ab, saba. So it's got the hamza on the top. So I hope that's clarified.
And when it says that it has a sakina, so it means it has like a jazm on it, like there's no sound on it.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so it's silent. Technically, it's silent. It just extends the one that's next to it.
Okay,
And yeah,
sakina means silent air, basically.
yeah. So it's basically it's innate in its nature. It's second in its nature.
Oh,
But
okay.
obviously, when combined with other letters, it gives them a different characteristic.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
So cases of the Arabic letter except for alif. As for the letter alif, it is always sakina, and the letter that precedes it always has a fatha. Regarding the stressed letter, it consists of two letters. The first is sakina, sakin, and the second is vowel. And I think the stressed mean the shadda, isn't it?
yeah, stressed. Well, yeah, here, yeah, I'm reading the Arabic with you as well. So it comes in two forms. The letter is either sakin, which is jazm, as we said. It's got a sukun, is silent vowel sound, or mutaharrik. It's got different vowel sounds. So by mutaharrik or stressed letter, I think here they mean fatha, dhamma, kasr.
Ah,
So
okay.
it comes in two forms. You either got, vowel sound or no vowel sound.
Ah, okay, yes. That makes sense.
But here it talks about the letter that precedes it. So the letter that precedes it always has a fatha.
Okay.
So we'll mention examples later. This will come in different types of mad.
So the written alphabetic letters, 28, which are their order according to the Eastern scholars is. So what is this one?
Oh yeah.
Can I read that? Abjad.
They call them abjadiyya. So here I'll probably read this. I'll give you an example later. So you got different when the Arabs speak. You got the first one we read was pronounced alphabets. In Arabic, it's called huruf al-hijaiyyah al-mantuqa. So the spoken ones. Here it's got abjad. Abjad here it's basically, this is different. This is not based on alphabetical order. So Arabs had this as an old system. It's abjad, hawaz, hutti, kalamun, صعف صعف طرشت, and got ضغط ضغط. Sorry, ضغط. That's the one. Don't worry about pronouncing this. There's two different forms of it. Some people in the past referred to it as, if you're looking at it at bullet points in the Middle East, sometimes you might see it'll say alif, ba, jim, dal. So that's what they refer to as abjad. So it might be it's an order, but it's not alphabetical order. It's like using Roman numerals. You know what I mean? They got one line, two lines, three lines, IV. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like like that, basically. That's what that's
Okay.
the Arab way of using it.
I've seen some mathematicians use letters instead. So this is the same thing you mean?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. So there's a specific order. So here, don't get too confused for it. Will not be assessed. It's not a requirement to know it as part of the Ijaza syllabus. But basically, this is good if you're going to memorize a Shatibiya, which is basically after you do when you study Tajweed, you learn Tuhfat al-Atfal, and after that when you do your Ijaza, you got Al-Jazariya. So that's about 176 lines, basically. And then once you're ready, you'll memorize this. You'll know which order the letters are. And you'll need to learn this to learn the Abjadi Shatibiya. Because Imam Shatibi, he uses a lot of shortcuts in this poem. It's a 1,000-line poem. So basically, he'll say, this guy, this guy, this guy, they read this way. This guy, this guy, this guy reads this way. Then after a while, rather than mentioning all of them, he'll just mention a letter. You see what I mean?
Okay.
So one letter denotes a school of thought. So you don't have to cover this in detail. So as long as you know the mantuqa, the pronounced alphabets, that's where you kind of need to worry about.
Okay, thank you. So Ash-Shatibi in his poem Hirz al-Amani followed the order of the Western scholars, and Ibn al-Jazari followed him in At-Tayyiba. Western
Yeah.
scholars.
Yes, Imam al-Jazari, which basically the whole school of thought of Tajweed, mashallah, he's basically the pioneer of it because he basically expanded the work of Imam al-Shatibi. He uses Abjadiyya, just like his previous Imam, and it's something they use in explaining their poem. This is basically, we're talking degree/PhD level stuff, so it's when you start Shatibiya, you'll be required to understand the Abjadiyya. But as far as and there's two different orders for the Abjadiyya. There's Western. By Western, it's like we're talking the Maghrib, for example. That's what we refer to them. And there's two different orders of alphabets. But the one that I said you're required to know, the huruf al-hijaiya mantuqa, the pronounced Arabic alphabets, are the alphabets that not only used for tajweed and pronunciation, or you see in the Qur'an qaida, they're the ones actually taught in the Middle East at a school level as well, at preschool as well. So that's basically the common Arabic alphabet. So unless you're getting really specialized, don't even touch Abjadiyya. So
Okay. Thank you, Jazakallah khair.
anyway.
So next is the page number 32, the organs of speech and how sounds and letters occur. The main articulation points of Arabic letters. The empty space in the throat and mouth. So the main articulation points of Arabic letters are the empty space in the throat and mouth, the throat, the mouth, which includes the upper palate, tongue, teeth, lips, and the nasal cavity. So those who have books can see the images. The next page mentions the parts of the throat, which includes the root of the tongue, epiglottis, and vocal cords. These are deep in the throat where the sounds actually originate. Then
Yeah,
the
we'll cover this in detail. Just two keywords to remember: epiglottis or epiglottis, whatever it is, the middle of the throat. This is specifically for ayn, or is known as lisan al-mizmar. So we'll explore that in detail. When I refer to that, at least you can see what it looks like. When I say at least you can feel and see this is what I'm referring to. When I tell you push back your epiglottis to bring it forward. So that's it. And the vocal cords basically like that's where the or the hamza comes out. So that's just to remember the importance of these two places of the throat. Next one, inshallah.
Okay. The upper hard palate, which includes the gums, pre-palate area, hard palate, soft palate, and at the very back, uvula.
Yes. So you got the soft palate and the hard palate. These are really important to know. The reason why people confuse the qa and the ka, they'll say ku instead of qu, and that changes the meaning, as we said. It's like eat you disbelievers instead of say you disbelievers, is their ability of not differentiating between a hard palate and a soft palate. So these things look really basic, but subhanAllah is like what we tend to do at an advanced level not just for adults, but also for kids as well. It's like we get them to feel the parts of their throat they've never experienced before. And once they touch it, I'll tell you, touch this with your tongue. Do this with the back of your throat. You'll be able to pronounce it, mashallah, a lot quicker. And mashallah, the guys at Otago Quran Club, mashallah, can testify. We've had less than a 10-minute turnaround sometimes with one people fixing their pronunciation. So knowing this it sounds a bit crazy. The reason why this is in front of the book, this is the most important thing you'll ever learn. And if you ever make a mistake in your ijazah, it's going to be here. 50% guaranteed. So we'll carry on next one, inshallah. Parts of the tongue.
So you mean these one determine the makharij basically? That's why
Yes. Yeah, they determine the makharij. Usually in your tajweed life, once you go past 10 or 20 years of studying tajweed, everything else you probably memorize.
Yeah.
So even if you memorize every single huruf, qalqala, ikhfa, idhar, that's not the problem. The problem is you will still, makharij is an ongoing thing. Subhanallah. That's why it's like that difficult. So it's, but to teach proper, not just at the ijazah level, to teach proper tajweed, you need to know your own makharij and your physical pronunciation and your human anatomy before you can actually teach it to others. It's like martial arts, basically. How can you explain, not being balanced if you haven't been a black belt, you haven't been thrown on the mat 1,000 times? So it's one of those things, hopefully. So I hope that answers that, inshallah.
So page 34, parts of the tongue, which include the edge of the tongue, and the middle of the tongue, and the root of the tongue. So you can see there as well. And then the teeth, which include which are in the front, incisors, central incisors, lateral incisors, canines, premolars, molars, and wisdom tooth at the back. So wisdom tooth is actually a molar as well, the third molar. The 35 page, the teeth. Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Yusuf as-Sarsari said, the young man's central and lateral incisors and canine teeth are 4 in number. The premolars are 4, then 6, plus 6 are the useful molars. The wisdom teeth are 4. They cannot be brought back if the young man loses them. So I don't understand what is the point of these lines actually? What is the
It's actually a really good point that you mentioned. I'll probably finish here today, inshallah, on this page. Mashallah, it goes to show, like, we're doing tajweed here. But people are asking, like, why are we doing human anatomy right now? We're sitting down discussing different parts of the teeth. We're talking at the throat. Mashallah even had, mashallah, and I actually did this for my university assignments as well, with regards to explaining, mashallah, the power of isnad. Is like, if you've got a bunch of people in the desert coming up with all these concepts, 1,500 years ago, it makes you, mashallah, understand the level of care they've given to qira'ah, mashallah. Like in terms of like exploring every single science necessary to facilitate ease of recitation. For example, now I'm going to answer your question. In Jazariya, in the poem here, he's talking about Ladras. So Imam al-Jazari, specifically in the 2nd chapter, it's not here in the book, but we don't cover the poem. You do that in your own time. But basically, I'm translating the poem in my head right now. Basically, he's saying when you do the law, you have to be in contact with one or both, and it says adras. He is talking about the top molar teeth. And he's trying to demonstrate to the Qari, this is how you do it. Certain letters, you have to actually, like Allah, you have to actually bring the tip of the tongue below the incisors. And you have to be specific about the articulation points, because if you don't use the right articulation point, and maybe you raise the tongue slightly to the hard palate, it could be the difference between a la and a da. You see what I mean?
I see.
So mashallah, the level of detail these people had, in my opinion, from a bunch of people that came from a desert background, raising sheep and camels and whatnot, is extremely advanced for its time. Mashallah. It's like, it's basically saying that, look, If you do not do it this way, you will not pronounce this letter correctly. Now, as difficult as it sounds in contrast, obviously I'm not trying here to scare you because, you know, I'm saying you need to learn this and this and this because it sounds like it's a big responsibility. It is a big responsibility. The good news is that, mashallah, and this is a study was done by Dr. Ayman Swaid himself, mashallah. They stuck cameras down people's throats. So you can imagine, I've seen the video lectures off the book, and mashallah, you can imagine the amount of work that went into his, you know, PhD level stuff at uni, man. They're sticking cameras down people's throats and whatnot. And the reason why you're feeling the khushu' of the Sahaba, and that's why I'm telling everybody, you have to do your ijazah. Every single qari and person I've seen memorize Quran, you have to do it. You're not just passing a piece of literature down that you just found in a library or a bookshelf. You're passing a divine set of revelation that's going to carry on, inshallah, till the day of judgment or until Allah lifts the Quran from the face of the earth. And not only is your khushu' at the level and you're experiencing, mashallah, what the Sahaba experience, you are physically, your body is physically tuned to the exact frequencies, phonetically. So physically and emotionally, you are actually experiencing what the Sahaba experienced. You guys get what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like you are physically, it's not like you're physically there and you're seeing what's happening in stuff. You are, you know, your organs on the inside. We've proved this with cameras, with Dr. Ayman Swaid's work, that this is possible because we are actually doing it as a Sahaba did. That's why if somebody came up to me and basically saying, look, I've done ijazah, I've done this and whatnot, and they're still making mistakes and not finding khushu', and they haven't cried during their ijazah session, I'll tell them, brother, you're a liar. Because let's be honest, a person that actually understands the science is bound to get emotional because, you know, you're giving up your life for such a purpose. So that's why, mashallah, when you think about it, and mashallah, you saw, as you saw, read brother, it says 656 Hijri. Like, mashallah, these guys like are doing this hundreds of years just to make sure they study these things to pass on the tradition carefully to all of us. So it doesn't make, some of the stuff, I have to admit, it doesn't make sense when you're learning it, but it certainly does when you're teaching because it actually helps you correct your students' qira'ah normally. So it's that's the biggest huge thing about it. So I hope that answers it.
Yep. And the Arabic, looking at the Arabic of it, seems like a poem as well, is it?
Exactly. It's kind of, yeah. So it's Arabs like to put things in poems so they stick in your head quite easy. So it's I'm
And
not sure about you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, please complete.
I'm not sure about you guys, but for some reason I find the poems harder to memorize. So subhanAllah. Oh man, are you saying, bro?
I think you need to sing them as well. That's why then they'll go into your mind.
Yeah, it's
So
does stick in your head.
I was asking the middle line. The premolars are 4, then 6. What does that mean? 4 and then 6.
Premolars are 4, then 6. Actually, let me check. To be honest, I haven't done the actual sharh of this specific one by Abu Zakaria. I
Because
think he's probably
I don't know, because premolar, this first premolar, second premolar, so it means there are 8, 2 on one side, and then all 4 sides is 8 basically. So I don't know what he means by 4 and then 6. Wallahu alam.
I think I'm guessing he means inclusive. That's my guess. So
Maybe.
it's yeah. So you got 4, but if you include this, it's 6. I think that's my guess.
Okay. Yep. So you want me to continue with the definition of sound?
Yeah, inshallah, we'll do that quickly. That way we
Okay.
finish that page.
Yep. So the definition of sound, it is an imbalance, vibration of the ear layers in a way which the human ear can perceive. The human ear perceives sounds when they vibrate between 20 and 20,000 vibrations in 1 second, approximately.
Yeah. So here he's referring to 20 and 20,000 hertz. That's the audible range. So whether you're doing medicine or signal processing and engineering, that's what they refer to the human audible range. But mashallah, as you can see, we said with Tajweed, you will cover the non-audible as well. And mashallah, you'll get mashayikh, they'll pick up the hams, like the breath after that ta or the k, like this. You get the people doing the sakt, bal, rana. And you know, it's pretty amazing. It's although it says they'll pick up the hertz, they'll pick up actually you got ikhtilas as well. Oh mate, these guys will pick up things below a second, I promise. Like, inshallah, it's although they might not teach this this scientific level, but the vibration part is going to make sense, inshallah, next week, because we'll cover letters that will actually be practical examples of vibration. So, inshallah, get ready to pronounce your life away with letters next week, inshallah, on page 36. So it's
Yeah,
going to be a
inshallah.
really practical class.
Yeah, great. Jazakallah khair.
Ajma'in. Yeah, any questions so far about different, whether it be introduction to the parts of the mouth or the human anatomy, Arabic letters, or Basmallah and Isti'adha? Yes, that's correct. So the question here that's come up, the question checking, is the number related to the one side molars and then combine them with the other side too? Yes, that's what I believe. So it's my understanding of like how the Sheikh has done it. So I have to, like I said, with all honesty, I haven't covered it with the molars. The molars I have covered, molars, as if I sound like I'm a dentist. Here is numbering. People say, why are they numbering the molars? As I said, specific parts of the teeth are used for specific sounds. So for us specifically, the most important ones, for the molars specifically, is you're worried about the top ones. So to say "bot" correctly, the side of your mouth, your tongue has to touch one set of molars, the right, as it says, the right or the left or both. And that's how you get a proper dot. So that's why we're studying about the molars. But don't get too crazy about it. Inshallah, these things will start making sense once we cover practical examples of the letters. Like, you will not normally be tested on this in this context. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending the session. So should we stop here now?
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair all for being switched on, and inshallah really engaging. Really discussions that really raise really good and practical questions. And they make sure I study my work, and hopefully everyone's benefit, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for your hard work.
I'll see you all.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah.
Ajma'in. Ajma'in, inshallah. Inshallah. We'll wrap it up, inshallah, brother Asra. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. La ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.
No.